You have to come last. Okay. Yeah, you can take if it's coming. Yeah, from your while working.
Hare Krishna. While working to reform Gaudiya Vaishnavism in India, he prayed to Lord Chaitanya, "Your teachings have been much depreciated. It is not in my power to restore them." And he prayed for a son to help him in his preaching. When, on February 6, 1874, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was born to Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Jagannath Puri, the Vaishnavas consider him the answer to his prayers. He was born with umbilical cord wrapped around his neck and draped across his chest like the sacred thread worn by Brahmanas. His parents gave him the name Bimala Prasada. When Bimala Prasada was 6 months old, the carts of the Jagannath festival stopped at the gate of Bhaktivinoda's residence, and for 3 days could not be moved. Bhaktivinoda Thakur's wife brought the infant onto the cart and approached the deity of Lord Jagannath. Spontaneously, the infant extended his arms and touched the feet of Lord Jagannath, and was immediately blessed with the garland that fell from the body of the Lord. While Bhaktivinoda Thakur learned that the Lord's garland had fallen onto his son, he realized that this was the son for whom he had prayed. One day, when Bimala Prasada was still a child of no more than 4 years, his father mildly rebuked him for eating a mango that had not yet duly offered to Lord Krishna. Bimala Prasada, although only a child, considered himself an offender to the Lord and vowed never to eat mangoes again. This was a vow that he would follow throughout his life. By the time Bimala Prasada was 7 years old, he had memorized the entire Bhagavad Gita, and he could even explain its verses. His father then began training him in proofreading and printing, in conjunction with publishing of the Vaishnava magazine, Sajjana Tosani. With his father, he visited many holy places and heard discourses from the learned Pandita. As a student, Bimala Prasada preferred to read books written by his father instead of the school texts. By the time he was 25, he had become well versed in Sanskrit, mathematics, and astronomy, and he had himself as the author and publisher of many magazine articles and one book, Surya Siddhanta, for which he received the epithet Siddhanta Saraswati in recognition of his erudition. When he was 26, his father guided him to take initiation from a renowned Vaishnava saint, Gaurakishora Dasa Babaji, who advised him to preach absolute truth and keep aside all other works. Receiving the blessings of Gaurakishora Das Babaji, Bimala Prasada, now Siddhanta Saraswati, resolved to dedicate his mind, body, and words to the service of Lord Krishna. In 1905, Siddhanta Saraswati took a vow to chant the Hare Krishna mantra 1 billion times. Residing in Mayapur in a grass hut near the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya, he chanted the Hare Krishna mantra day and night. He cooked rice once a day in an earthen pot and ate nothing more. He slept on the ground, and when the rainwater leaked through the grass ceiling, he sat beneath an umbrella chanting. In 1911, when his aging father was lying ill, Siddhanta Saraswati took up a challenge against pseudo-Vaishnavas who claimed that birth in their caste was a prerequisite for preaching Krishna consciousness. The caste-conscious Brahmana community had become incensed by Bhaktivinoda Thakur's presentation of many scriptural proof that anyone, regardless of birth, could become a Brahmana Vaishnava. These smarter Brahmanas, out to prove the inferiority of the Vaishnavas, arranged a discussion. On behalf of his indisposed father, young Siddhanta Saraswati wrote an essay, The Conclusive Difference Between the Brahmana and the Vaishnava, and submitted before his father. Despite his poor health, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was elated to hear the arguments that would soundly defeat the challenge of the smarters. Siddhanta Saraswati then traveled to Midnapur, where Panditas from all over India had gathered for a 3-day discussion. Some of the smarter Panditas who spoke first claimed that anyone born in a Sudra family, even though initiated by a spiritual master, could never become purified and perform the Brahminical duties of worshipping the deity or initiating disciples. Finally, Siddhanta Saraswati delivered his speech. He began quoting Vedic references glorifying the Brahmanas, and at this, the smartest scholars became very much pleased. But when he began discussing the actual qualification for becoming a Brahmana, the qualities of the Vaishnavas, the relationship between the two, and who, according to the Vedic literature, is qualified to become a spiritual master and initiate disciples, then the joy of the Vaishnava haters disappeared. Siddhanta Saraswati conclusively proved from the scriptures, if one is born a Sudra but exhibits the qualities of a Brahmana, then he should be honored as a Brahmana despite his birth. And if one is born in a Brahmana family but acts like a Sudra, then he is not a Brahmana. After his speech, Siddhanta Saraswati was congratulated by the president of the conference, and thousands thronged around him. It was a victory for Vaishnavism. With the passing away of his father in 1914 and his spiritual master in 1915, Siddhanta Saraswati continued the mission of Lord Chaitanya. He assumed editorship of Sajjana Tosani and established a Bhagavad press in Krishnanagar. Then, in 1918 in Mayapur, he sat down before a picture of Gaurakishora Dasa Babaji and initiated himself into the sannyas order. At this time, he assumed the sannyas title Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaja. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was dedicated to using the printing press as the best medium for large-scale distribution of Krishna consciousness. He thought of the printing press as a Brihad Mridanga, a big Mridanga. Although the Mridanga drum had traditionally been used to accompany Kirtana, even during the time of Lord Chaitanya, and although Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati himself led Kirtana parties and sent groups of devotees chanting in the streets and playing on the Mridangas, such Kirtanas could be heard only for a block or two. But with the Brihad Mridanga, the big Mridanga drum of the printing press, the message of Lord Chaitanya could be spread all over the world. Most of the literature Abhay began reading had been printed on the Bhagavad press, while Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had established in 1915. The Bhagavad press had printed the Chaitanya Charitamrita with commentary by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, the Bhagavad Gita with commentary by Vishwanath Chakravarti, and one after another, the works of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. This literature was a spiritual heritage coming from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who had appeared almost 500 years before. Abhay had been a devotee of Lord Chaitanya since childhood, and he was familiar with the life of Lord Chaitanya. Abhay had been a devotee of Lord Chaitanya since childhood, and he was familiar with the life of Lord Chaitanya through the well-known scriptures of Chaitanya Charitamrita and Chaitanya Bhagavata. He had learned of Lord Chaitanya not only as the most ecstatic form of a pure devotee who had spread the chanting of the holy name to all parts of India, but also as a direct appearance of Sri Krishna himself in the form of Radha and Krishna combined. But now, for the first time, Abe was in touch with a great wealth of literature compiled by the Lord's immediate associates and followers, passed down in disciplined succession and expanded on by great authorities. Lord Chaitanya's immediate followers, Sri Rupa Goswami, Srila Sanatan Goswami, Srila Jiva Goswami, and others, had compiled many volumes based on the Vedic scriptures and proven conclusively that Lord Chaitanya's teaching were the essence of Vedic wisdom. There were many books not yet published, but Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was intent on establishing many presses, just to release the sound of the Brihad Mridanga for benefit of all people. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was teaching the conclusion of Lord Chaitanya's teaching, that Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that the chanting of his holy name should be stressed above all other religious practices. In former ages, other methods of attaining to God had been available, but in the present age of Kali, only the chanting of the Hare Krishna would be effective. On the authority of the scriptures, such as the Brihan, Naradiya Purana, and the Upanishads, Bhaktivinoda Thakur had specially cited the Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Lord Krishna himself had confirmed in Bhagavad Gita that the only method of attaining him was devotional service. Quote, abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. End of quote. Abe knew these verses. He knew the chanting and he knew the conclusions of the Gita. But now, as he eagerly read the writings of the great acharyas, he had fresh realizations of the scope of Lord Chaitanya's mission. Now he was discovering the depth of his own Vaishnava heritage and his efficacy for bringing about the highest welfare for people in an age destined to be full of troubles. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was often traveling, and Abe was busy with his family and business, so to arrange another meeting was not possible. Yet from their first encounter, Abe had considered Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati his spiritual master, and Abe began thinking of him always. I have met such a saintly person. Whenever possible, Abe would seek out Srila Bhaktisiddhanta disciples, the members of the Gaudiya Math. As for Gandhi's movement, Gandhi had suffered a bitter setback with his nonviolent followers when his nonviolent followers had blundered and committed violence during a protest. The British had taken the opportunity to arrest Gandhi and sentence him to 6 years in jail. Although his followers still revered him, the nationalist movement had lost much of its impetus. But regardless of that, Abe was no longer interested. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had defeated his idea that the nationalist cause was India's first priority. He had invoked Abe's original Krishna consciousness, and Abe now felt confident that Bhaktisiddhanta's mission was a real priority. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had invited him to preach, and from that moment, Abe had wanted to join the Gaudiya Math as one of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's disciples. But now, instead of his political inclinations, it was his family obligation that stood in the way. He was no longer thinking, first, let us become an independent nation, then preach about Lord Chaitanya. Now he was thinking, I cannot take part like the others. I have my family responsibilities. As the family was growing, in 1921, Abe and his wife had their first child, a son, and there would be more children and more income would be needed. Earning money meant sacrificing time and energy, and it meant at least being distracted from the mission of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Indian culture had the highest regard for the family institution, and divorce was unheard of. Even if a man was in great financial difficulty, he would remain with his wife and children. Although Abe expressed regret at not being a sannyasi disciple in the Gaudiya Math, he never seriously considered leaving his young wife so early in their marriage. Gaur Mohan was pleased to hear of his son's attraction to a Vaishnava guru, but he never expected Abe to abandon responsibilities and enter the renounced order. A Vaishnava could remain with wife and family, practice spiritual life at home, and even become active in preaching. Abe would have to find ways to serve the mission of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati as a family man. Abe thought that if he were to become very successful in business, then he could spend money not only to support his family, but also to help support Śrīla Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's mission of spreading Krishna consciousness. An astrologer had even predicted that Abe would become one of the wealthiest men in India. But with his present income, he could do little more than provide for his family's needs. He thought he might do better by trying to develop a business on his own. Abe expressed his feelings to Dr. Bose, who listened like a sympathetic father and suggested that Abe become his agent for all of northern India. Abe could purchase medicines, liniments, rectified spirits, toothpastes, and other items wholesale from Dr. Bose's factory and travel widely throughout northern India, building up his own business. Although Abe had enough experience with Bose's laboratory that he could try to make and market some of his own medicines and products. Dr. Bose and Abe decided that the centrally located city of Allahabad would be a good place for Abe to make his headquarters. In 1923, Abe and his a 12-hour train ride northeast from Calcutta and had built many good buildings there, including buildings for a high court and a university. Europeans and affluent Indian families like the Nehrus lived in a modern paved, well-lit section of town. There was also another older section with ancient narrow streets closely lined with buildings and shops. Many Bengalis resided there, and it was there that Abe decided to settle his family. He had chosen Allahabad, traditionally known as Prayaga, as a good location for business, but it was also one of India's most famous places of pilgrimage. Situated at the confluence of the three holiest rivers of India, the Ganges, the Yamuna, the Saraswati, situated at the confluence of the three holiest rivers of India, the Ganges, the Yamuna, and the Saraswati, Allahabad was a site of two of India's most widely attended spiritual events, the annual Magha Mela and the Kumbh Mela, which took place every 12 years. And in search of spiritual purification, millions of pilgrims from all over India would converge here each year at the time of the full moon in the month of Magna, January, and bathe at the junction of the three sacred rivers. Abe's home at 60 Badshahi Mundi consisted of a few rented rooms. For his business, he rented a small shop in the commercial center of the city at Johnston Gong Road, where he opened his dispensary. Prayag Pharmacy began selling medicines, tinctures, syrups, and other products manufactured by Bose's laboratory. He met an Allahabad physician, Dr. Ghosh, who was interested in business partnership. So Abe asked him to become his attending physician and move his office to Prayag Pharmacy. Dr. Ghosh consented and closed his shop, Tropical Pharmacy. At Prayag Pharmacy, Dr. Josh would diagnose patients and give medical prescriptions, which Abe would fill. Dr. Josh would then receive a 25% commission from the sale of the prescriptions. Abe and Dr. Josh became friends. They would visit at each other's home, and they treated each other's children like their own family members. Often they discussed their aspirations for increase in profits. Dr. Josh. Abe was a business-minded man. We were all God-fearing, of course. In every home, we have a small temple, and we must have deities. But he used to always talk about business and how to meet family expenses. Although at home, Abe wore a curtain dhoti, sometimes for business, he would dress in shirt and pants. He was a good-looking, full mustache, energetic young man in his late 20s. He and Radharani Dey now had 2 children. A daughter was born after they had been in Allahabad 1 year. Mohan, who was now 75, had come to live with him, as he had Abe's widowed mother, Rajeshwari, and her son, Tulasi. Mohan mostly stayed at home, chanted on his beads, and worshipped the Shalagram Śrīla deity of Krishna. He was satisfied that Abe was doing right, and Abe was satisfied to have his father living comfortably with him and freely worshiping Krishna. Abe led a busy life. He was intent on building his business. By 8 a.m., he would go to his pharmacy, where he would meet Dr. Josh and begin his day's work. At noon, he would come home, and then he would return to the pharmacy in the late afternoon. He had purchased a large Buick for 8,000 rupees, and although he never drove it himself, he let his nephew, a good driver, use it for his taxi business. Occasionally, Abe would use the car for his own business excursions, and his nephew would then act as his chauffeur. It so happened that both Motilal Nehru and his son Jawaharlal were customers at Prayag Pharmacy. Because Jawaharlal would always order Western medicine, Abe thought that he must have felt that Indian ways were inferior. Once Jawaharlal approached Abe for political contribution, and Abe donated. Being a conscientious merchant, during the day, Abe would talk with his customer and other friends who would stop by, and they would tell him many things. A former military officer used to tell Abe stories of World War I. He told her Marshal Foch in France had one day ordered the killing of thousands of Belgian refugees, whose maintenance had become a burden to him on the battlefield. A Mohammedan gentleman, a member of a royal family in Afghanistan, would come daily with his son to sit and chat. Abe would listen to his visitors and converse presently and make up their prescriptions. But his thoughts kept returning to his meeting with Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. He went over it again and again in his mind, how he had looked, his mannerism, what he had said. At night, Abe would go home to his wife and children. Radharani was a chaste and faithful wife who'd spent her days cooking, cleaning, and caring for her 2 children. But she was not inclined to share her husband's interest in things spiritual. He could not convey to her his feelings about Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Abe, his wife, their 2 children, Mohan, Abe's younger brother, Krishna Charan, Abe's widowed sister, Rajeshwari, and her son, Tulsidas Das, all went together to an Allahabad studio for a family portrait. The photo shows Abe in his late 20s. He is thin and dark, with a full mustache. His forehead is broad, his eyes dark and clear. He wears a white curtain dhoti and plain dark slippers. He sits in a chair, his wife standing behind him. An attractive young woman in a white khadi sari with a line of color on the border. Her slim arm rests behind Abe's head on the back of his chair, her small hand gripping the edge of the chair. Her left hand hangs by her side, gripped in a fist. She is barefoot. With his left hand, Abe steadies his 2-year-old boy, Pacha, who is Prayagraj, a glaring infant on his lap. The boy seemed to squirm, his baby legs and bare feet dangling by his mother's knee. Abe seems a bit amused by the son on his lap. Abe is a handsome Indian man, his wife an attractive woman, both young. Also behind Abe stands his nephew Tulsi and his brother Krishna Charan. Sitting on the far right is Abe's sister Rajeshwari, dressed in a widow's white sari, holding Sula Kushmana, Abe's daughter, on her lap. Sula Kushmana is also squirming, her foot jutting towards the photographer. In the center sits Gaur Mohan. His face is shriveled and his whole body is emaciated with age. He is also wearing a white kurta and dhoti. His hands seem to be moving quietly on his lap, perhaps with palsy. He's short and small and old. Abid traveled frequently throughout northern India, intent on expanding his sales. It was not unusual for him to be gone a few days in a week, and sometimes a week or more at a time. He traveled from one city to another. The pharmaceutical industry was just beginning in India, and doctors, hospitals, and pharmacies were eager to buy from the competent, gentlemanly agent who called on them from Bose's laboratory of Calcutta. He would travel by train and stay in hotels. He liked the feeling of freedom from home that traveling afforded. But the real drive was servicing accounts and getting new ones. That was his business. Riding in a third class unreserved compartment was often comfortable. The only seats were benches, which were often dirty, and passengers were permitted to crowd on without reservations. But that is how Abe traveled hundreds of miles every week. As the train moved between towns, he would see the numberless small villages, and then the country land that spread out before him on either side of the tracks. At every stop, he would hear cries of the tea vendors as they walk alongside the train windows. Chai, chai, tea. The British had introduced it, and now millions of Indians were convinced that they could not get through the morning without their little glass of hot tea. As a strict Vaishnava, Abe never touched it, but his wife, much to his displeasure, was becoming a regular tea drinker. Although Abe was accustomed to dressing as a European businessman, he never compromised his strict Vaishnava principles. Most of his fellow Bengalis had taken up fish eating, but Abe was always careful to avoid non-Vaishnava foods, even at hotels. Once at a vegetarian hotel, the Empire Hindu Hotel in Bombay, he would serve onions, and sometimes hotel people tried to serve him mushroom, garlic, and even eggs, but all these he carefully avoided. Keeping a small semblance of his home routine, he would take his bath early in the morning with cold water. He followed this routine year-round, and when in Saharanpur, he did so during the bitter cold weather. The hotel keeper was greatly surprised. Abe conversed with many people in his travels. A doctor in Dhaka told him that on his way to the office, he had passed a farmer talking to a friend, and he could tell by the sound of the farmer's cough that the farmer would die within a few hours. Another doctor told Abe that he had just come from seeing a pneumonia patient who was defying nature and medical science by continuing to live. He met a Mohammedan doctor in Gaya who lamented that he had just lost a patient. Although he had given the man the very best medicine, such accounts from men of the medical profession confirmed Abe's conviction that without God's sanction, no one could be saved. Not that he had ever thought of his medical sales as philanthropic work. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had already convinced him that the only way to save a person was by giving him Krishna consciousness. Abe's medical products were strictly for business. On one business trip, it was in 1925, he traveled through Agra, only 40 miles south of Vrindavan. Taking the opportunity, he made his first visit to holy Vrindavan, fulfilling his childhood aspiration. He loved the sight of Vrindavan, but he could only spend a day or two. Even a single day away from his day's work could be critical. As a reverent pilgrim, Abe visited a few temples, especially the principal temple established by the followers of Lord Chaitanya, but he had to move on. There were also risks in traveling. Once he was sitting in a train compartment in Mathura station when a monkey suddenly appeared and took away his belongings. Early one morning before dawn, while he was on his way to Kanpur in a two-wheeled horse carriage, the horse was going on a fast trot when suddenly it hit a large heap of rubbish in the middle of the road. The carriage turned upside down. Horse, driver, and carriage all landed in a heap, and Abe was thrown into the air. But he landed unharmed, feeling as though he had just changed to another seat. Because Abe sat but said nothing, the driver thought he'd been knocked unconscious and became anxious. The passenger was all right, however, and the driver considered it a miracle, since the cart had so violently ejected him. Abe took it that he had been saved by Krishna and remembered similar incidents starting with his childhood when his clothing had caught on fire. Krishna always protected him. For 5 years, Abe traveled widely out of Allahabad, and when he was home, he had put in long hours at dispensary. But he also spent time with his wife and played with his children. This is from Śrīla Prabhupada. Śrīla Prabhupada. When my son was about 2 years old, he was very naughty, always doing some mischief. My friends used to visit me and call my son Pacha. Pacha, if you sit down for 1 minute silently, I will give you a gift. But the boy failed. He could not sit down even for a minute. There was a table fan and Pacha was wanting to touch it. I said, no, don't touch. But again, he tried to touch it. So my friend said, just lower the speed and let him touch it. So I unplugged the fan, then he touched it. It did not harm him, but it hit his finger with a loud noise. Dong! And then he would not touch again. And I would ask him, touch again? But he would not. As soon as his daughter, Sukshamana, could speak, he began teaching her the Bengali translation of the prayer Astakam, which begins, quote, the spiritual master is receiving benedictions from the ocean of mercy, just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it. The spiritual master extinguishes the blazing fire of material life, of repeated birth and death, end of quote. Except for his obligatory travels, Abe stayed at home and satisfied his family. He tended diligently to business and it prospered. It was Kumbh Mela, January 1928. Bhakti Pradipa Trita Maharaj of the Gaudiya Math had come to Allahabad with a few men. One day he walked unannounced into Prayag pharmacy and all of a sudden, Abe was seeing them again after so many years. Oh, these are the people I saw before, he thought. Gaudiya Math, yes, come in. Bhakti Pradipa Trita Swami was the same sannyasi who would visit Narendranath Molok in Calcutta, a visit that had led to Abe's going to visit Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Folding his palms in a humble gesture, standing before Abe in simple saffron khadi robes, his shaven head with a tuft of sika in the back, his forehead marked with Vaishnava tilak, Trita Maharaj said to Abe, we are new here. We're going to establish a temple in Allahabad. We have heard your name, so we have come to you. Please help us. Abe was joyful. Yes, I will help you. He contributed what money he could, then introduced Rita Maharaj to Dr. Josh, who also contributed. Abe invited the Gaudiya Math devotees to come to his home and hold a bhajana and lecture. His wife would cook prasadam. They accepted, but when they arrived, there was a misunderstanding. Garmohan, who was invalid, was staying in his room upstairs. Please come down, Abe called. There's a meeting of the Gaudiya Math. Garmohan came downstairs, and when he saw the sadhus, he mistook them for impersonalists from a non-devotional mission. He had not heard correctly what Abe said. Garmohan took a seat. But he observed the saffron-clothed men solemnly and even made a critical remark. Abe, who was enlivened at the opportunity associated with the Vaishnavas and hear from them, Krishna Katha, could not understand his father's behavior. Then, as soon as Bhakti Prabhupāda-līlāmṛta Swami began his lecture, Garmohan understood. Oh, they are Vaishnavas, he cried. Old and invalid as he was, he immediately fell down at their feet. I misunderstood you, sir. I thought you were sannyasis from another mission. I'm glad to meet you. After a Kumbh Mela, Prabhupāda-līlāmṛta Swami left, but 5 or 6 brahmachari disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati stayed on in Allahabad, maintaining a small math headquarters. They worshipped the deity, held the evening program of kirtana and lecture, and preached actively to the local people. The devotee in charge, Atulananda Brahmachari, would visit the homes of Allahabad citizens, trying to solicit members for the matter. For half a rupee per month, a person will receive a subscription to the Gaudiya Math magazine. In the course of his door-to-door soliciting, Atulananda knocked on the door of Abe Charande. Abe received him very hospitably and offered him some rice and fruit. Abe was very receptive to the philosophy and religious discussions with Atulananda, who made it a point to visit Mr. Day repeatedly and speak with him about Lord Chaitanya and the Bhagavad Gita. Abe also inquired into the recent activities of Śrīla Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. By now, Śrīla Bhaktisiddhanta had established a Gaudiya printing works in Calcutta and had begun to publish the Srimad Bhagavatam in several volumes with his own annotations. He had also published an edited version of Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat from his center in Dhaka. He had opened centers in Bhubaneswar, Madras, and Puri. Abe's interest was insatiable. Atulananda told him how in 1925, Śrīla Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had held a big procession circumambulating the holy land of Navadvipa, with deities riding on the backs of gorgeously decorated elephants, and with devotees from all parts of India attending. Envious professional priests who opposed Śrīla Bhaktisiddhanta acceptance of disciples from all castes had employed a gang to help them hurl bricks and rocks on the procession. But Śrīla Bhaktisiddhanta had continued undaunted. In 1926, he had toured throughout India, preaching the message of Lord Chaitanya. He had also installed deities in large temple of Sri Chaitanya Math in Mayapur. And a year ago, he had begun publishing his magazine, Sajana Tasani, in 3 languages, including an English edition called The Harmonist. After several visits and hours of discussion on the activities and philosophy of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, Atulananda brought Mr. Day to the Allahabad ashram. Shortly thereafter, the Math relocated to a rented house on South Malacca Street near Rambagh, just a short walk from Abe's house. Now it was possible for Abe to visit every evening. After work, he would attend the Math, where he would play the mridanga. surprising the brahmachari with his already developed Mridanga playing skills. He sang bhajanas with them and sometimes took the lead part in the congregational singing. He would also bring important persons from Allahabad to visit the mat. For the brahmacharis, Abe seemed to give new life to their ashram, and for Abe, new life had come to him in his reunion with the disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. In 1930, Gaur Mohan's health took a turn for the worse, and his family members gathered around him, thinking that his end would come. Abe had been in Bombay on business, and it was late when he reached Allahabad and knocked on the door. Gaur Mohan told his daughter Rajeshwari, "Open the door, Abe has come." She replied, "No, he is in Bombay." Gaur Mohan repeated, "I tell you that he has come. You open the door." It was midnight. She went downstairs, opened the door, and found that her brother had indeed come. Abe went to his father. "How are you?" "I'm all right," Gaur Mohan replied. "You just take rest for the night." The next morning, Abe called the doctor. "How your father is living, we don't know," the doctor told him. "He has practically no pulse. He's been living without food for several months." Abe asked his father, "What is your wish? Tell me." "Why are you asking?" his father replied. "Has the doctor told you anything?" Abe said, "No, I'm I'm asking because I'm staying in Bombay and you're here. So if you have any wish, any intention, let me know. I'm here for you." Gormohan told him to give their cow to the Allahabad Gaudiya mat. So Abe took the cow along with her calf and donated them to the mat. Then again he asked his father, "Have you got any other wish?" Then again his father asked, "Has the doctor told you anything?" "No, no, I'm simply asking because for my business I have to go." Then Gaur Mohan said, "Invite all the Gaudiya Vaishnavas of Allahabad and other Vaishnavas also. Let them chant Harinama in the evening and you supply them with good food. That is my wish." Abe arranged it, and in the evening the Harinama started. At 11 o'clock, all of them took prasadam and left. That night, Gaur Mohan passed away. Abe felt the loss of his father painfully. His father had given him everything he had ever wanted. He had been careful to raise him as a pure Vaishnava and had always worshipped Radha and Krishna. Although Abe was a competent young man, he felt lost without his dearmost protector and friend. More than anyone else, Gaur Mohan was the one who had always guided Abe. And treated him as the most special person. Hare Krishna. Let me bring my glass.
You will continue. Without
Without this one.
special person. Okay. Hare यहाँ से
कहाँ से प्रभु? ओके,
ये हो गया,
हो गया, ये पैराग्राफ हो गया.
पर स्पेशल पर्सन तक हो गया ना, विदाउट मदर्स.
So I should start from here.
हाँ ठीक है.
Anyone else? Gurmohan was the one who had always guided Abhay and treated him as the most special person. Without his father, Abhay now felt hopeless. He suddenly felt the same dependency he had felt as a small boy. But now without his father, oh, it's good, Prabhu. चला गया. Without his father. Here?
एक सेकंड बाबा.
Without his father. नहीं, प्रभुपाद-लीलामृत. आपको पढ़ना है? सॉरी प्रभु.
You're going down to it?
I'm thinking about it, yeah.
Huh?
I'm thinking. I can't take it.
Oh. I can do some stuff.
It's in him, you like it.
You have some rules? Good for that.
Whatever you like. I'm gonna read some. Oh.
He was hopeless.
It's going to be. It's called. I think. See.
Oh, thank you so much. Without his father, Abhay now felt hopeless. He suddenly felt the same dependency he had felt as a small boy. But now, without his father, the one who had always treated him as a pet son, deserving all loving attention, the one who had given him whatever he had wanted and who had literally prayed to every holy man he met that his son become a great devotee of Srimati Radharani. That best well-wisher was now gone. On the day of Shraddha, 13 days after Gauramohan passed away, Abhay and his brother posed for a formal photograph. In accordance with the religious custom, the two sons had shaved their heads. The photograph shows Abhay and his brother sitting on either side of formal portrait of their father. The portrait is on the elevated stand and is surrounded with dark cloths. The picture is nicely framed. Gauramohan looks old but still thoughtful and intent. Not so old as the former portrait,
where he had looked emaciated with eyes almost dimmed. Abhay, with his head shaved, looks like a renounced monk, and his body is covered with the robes of a monk. Simple draped in a broad false covering the upper and lower parts of his body. He looks quite different than he had in the picture that was taken in the same place, with the same rough carpet on the floor. Years before, in that picture with his wife and children gathered around him, he was very much the young householder, surrounded by his responsibilities of family and looking like he knew about to conduct himself well and move energetically in the world. But in this photo, although his children are present, they are seated unattended on the floor. Abhay's left hand is on his knee, poised and yet at rest, where areas in the former picture he left hand had been holding his restless son. Abhay's wife is not present. In this picture, Abhay looks striking. One cannot tell that he usually has a head of hair and a mustache, but he has only recently shone for the mournful observance of his father's passing away. Instead, this seems to be his natural appearance. There is a mysterious, spiritual air about him, as one might expect in a meditating saint. His look is neither agitated, nor cheerful, nor sorrowful. It is peaceful and knowing, as if he has suddenly become a sadhu on the day his father has passed away. He looks like the sadhu his father envisioned he would become. He looks as if he is and always was a sadhu and has suddenly been revealed as such on this day, even by the most casual inspection of the photo. It appears that by shaving his head and dressing in robes, without no shirt or shoes, Abhay has become a sadhu. Chapter 4. How shall I serve you? I have every hope that you can turn yourself into a very good English preacher if you serve the mission to inculcate the novel impression of Lord Chaitanya's teaching to the people in general as well as philosophers as a religionist. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati in a letter to Śrīla Prabhupada, December 1936. In October of 1932, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati led a group of hundreds of disciples and pilgrims on the month-long parikrama or circumambulation of the sacred place of Vrindavan. Vrindavana residents and visitors perform parikrama by following the old dry bed of the Yamuna river and circumambulating the Vrindavan area, stopping at the place where Krishna performed his pastimes when he roamed in Vrindavan 5,000 years ago. Abhay had wanted to attend Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's parikrama but couldn't because his work. Nevertheless, on the 20th day of the pilgrimage, he traveled from Allahabad, intent on seeing Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati again and hoping to join the parikrama party at Koshi, just outside Vrindavan, at least for a day. The parikrama Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had organized was one of the biggest ever seen in Vrindavan. By engaging so many people, He was using the parikrama as a method of mass preaching. Even as early in 1918, he had first begun his missionary work. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's specific contribution had been his emphasis on preaching. Prior to his advent, the Vaishnavas had generally avoided populated places, and they had performed their worship in holy, secluded places like Vrindavan. Even when they had traveled to preach, they would maintain the simple mode of impoverished mendicant. The Goswami followers during Lord Chaitanya's time had lived in Vrindavan underneath trees. One night under a tree, the next night under another. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, whose aim was on preaching worldwide, knew that the renunciation of the Goswamis was not possible for Westerners. Therefore, he wanted to introduce the idea that devotees could even live in a big palatial temple. He had accepted a large donation from a worthy Vaishnava merchant and in 1930 had constructed a large marble temple in a Bagh Bazar section of Kolkata. In the same year, he had moved, along with many followers, from his small rented quarters at Uttadanga to the impressive new headquarters. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Śrīla Bhaktisiddhanta was demonstrating that although a devotee should not spend a cent on his own sense gratification, he could spend millions of rupees for the service of Krishna. While previously Vaishnavas would not have had anything to do with the mechanized contrivances introduced by the British, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, on the authority of scripture, was demonstrating a higher understanding. It was Rupa Goswami, the great disciple of Lord Chaitanya, who had written, "One is perfectly detached from all materialistic worldly entanglement, not when one gives up everything, but when employs everything for the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna." This is understood to be the perfect renunciation on yoga. If everything is God's energy, then why should anything be given up? If God is good, then his energy is also good. Material things should not be used for one's own sense enjoyment, but they could be and should be used for the service of Krishna. So Srila Bhakti Siddhanta wanted to use the most modern printing presses. He wanted to invite worldly people to hear Krishna Katha in gorgeously built temples. And for their preaching, devotees should not hesitate to ride in the best conveyances, wear swing cloth, or live amidst material opulences. It was in this spirit that he had constructed the building at Bagh Bazaar and there displayed a theistic exhibition, a series of dioramas assembled from finely finished, painted, and dressed clay dolls. Such dolls are a traditional art form in Bengal, but the staging of nearby 100 elaborate displays depicting the Vaishnava philosophy and the pastimes of Lord Krishna had never before been seen. The theistic exhibition created a sensation, and thousands attended daily. In that same year, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had taken about 40 disciples on a parikrama all over India. a tour featuring many public lectures and Srila Bhakti Siddhanta's meetings with important men. By 1932, he had 3 presses in different parts of India, printing 6 journals in various Indian dialects. In Calcutta, a politician had asked Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati how he could possibly print his Nadia Prakash as a daily newspaper. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati had replied that it was not so amazing if one considered that in Calcutta alone there are almost half a dozen ordinary daily newspapers. Although Calcutta was but one city amongst all the cities of India, India was but one nation amongst many nations on earth. The earth was but an insignificant planet amidst all the other planets in the universe. This universe was one amongst universes so numerous that each was like a single mustard seed in a big bag of mustard seeds. And the entire material creation was only one small fraction of the creation of God. Nadia Prakash was not writing the news of Calcutta or the earth, but news from the unlimited spiritual sky, which is much greater than all material worlds combined. So, if the daily Calcutta newspapers could report limited earthly tidings, then small wonder that Nadia Prakash could appear daily. In fact, a newspaper about the spiritual world could be printed every moment, were there not shortage of interested readers. One of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta's publication was in English, The Harmonist, and it advertised the Vrindavan Parikrama of 1932. Circumambulation of Sri Brajamandal. His Divine Grace Paramahamsa Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, the spiritual head of Madhva Gaudiya Vaishnava community following Shri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, has been pleased to invite the cooperation of all persons of every nationality, irrespective of caste, creed, color, age, or sex, in the devotional function of circumambulation of the holy sphere of Braja, in the footsteps of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna Chaitanya, who exhibited the Leela of performing the circumambulation of Sri Braj Mandal during the winter of 1514 AD. When Abhay had heard from the members of the Allahabad Gaudiya Mutt about the parikrama, he had been fully occupied with his loyal Prayag pharmacy business and traveling to secure new accounts. But he had calculated how he could join at least for a day or two, and he had fixed his mind on again obtaining the darshan of Śrīla Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. Śrīla Prabhupada, I was not initiated at the time of the parikrama, but I had very good admiration for these Gaudiya Mutt people. They were very kind to me, so I thought, what are these people doing in this parikrama? Let me go. So I met them at Koshi. The parikrama party traveled with efficient organization. An advance group bringing all the bedding and tents would go ahead to the next day's location, where they would camp and set up the kitchen. Meanwhile, the main party bearing the deity of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had come and by bearing the deity of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and accompanied by Kirtana singers would visit the places of Lord Krishna's pastime in the evening in the camp. The camp was divided into sections and arranged in a semicircle, and pilgrims were assigned to a particular section for the night. In the center were the quarters of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta and the deity of Lord Chaitanya, and close by the tents of the sannyasis. There were separate camps for ladies and men. Married couples did not stay together. There were also a volunteer corps of guards who stayed up all night patrolling the area. At night, the camp, with its hundreds of tents with gaslights and campfires, resembled a small town, and local people would come to see, astonished at the arrangements. In the evening, everyone would gather to hear a discourse by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. The pilgrims would rise early morning and chant Hare Krishna together. Then, carrying the deity of Lord Chaitanya, they would set out in procession, Kirtana groups, the police band, the lead horse, the flag bearers, and all the pilgrims. They traveled to holy places, the birthplace of Lord Krishna, the place where Lord Krishna slew Kamsa, the Adikeshav temple, Radha Kund, Sham Kund, and many others. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati's massive pilgrimage had been rolling on with great success when he met with serious opposition. The local temple proprietors in Vrindavan objected to Srila's Bhakti Siddhanta's awarding the sacred Brahminical thread to devotees not born in the families of Brahmana. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, throughout his lectures and writings, had repeatedly proven from the Vedic scriptures that one is a Brahmana not by birth but by qualities. He often cited a verse from Sanatana Goswami's Hari Bhakti Vilas, stating that just as base metal, when mixed with mercury, can become gold, so an ordinary man can become a Brahmana if initiated by a bona fide spiritual master. He also often cited a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, in which the great sage Narad tells King Yudhishthir that if one is born in the family of a Shudra but acts as a Brahman, he has to be accepted as a Brahman. And if one is born in a family of a Brahmana but acts as a Shudra, he is to be considered as a Shudra. Because the prime method of spiritual advancement in the age of Kali is the chanting of the holy name of God. Any person who chants Hare Krishna should be recognized as saintly person. When the local Panditas approached Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati for discussion, they questioned his leniency in giving initiation and his awarding the Brahminical thread and sannyasa dress to persons of lower castes. Because of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati's scholarly, forceful presentation, the Panditas seemed satisfied with the discussion. But when the Parikrama party arrived at Vrindavan's 7 main temples, which had been erected by the immediate followers of Lord Chaitanya, the party found the doors closed. Vrindavan shopkeepers closed their businesses, and some people even threw stones at the passing pilgrims. But the Parikrama party, led by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, continued in good spirits, despite the animosity, and on October 28, the party arrived at Kosi, the site of the treasury of Krishna's father, King Nanda. Abhay arrived in Mathura by train from Allahabad and approached Kosi by rickshaw. The countryside was full of charm for Abhay. Instead of factories and large buildings, there were mostly forests. And aside from main paved road on which he traveled, there were only dirt roads and soft sandy lanes. As a Vaishnava, Abhay felt sensations an ordinary man wouldn't. Now and then he sighted a peacock in the field, its exotic plumage proclaiming the glories of Vrindavan and Krishna. Even a non-devotee, however, would appreciate the many varieties of birds, their interesting cries and songs filling the air. Occasionally, a tree would be filled with madly chirping sparrows, making their urgent twilight clamor before resting for the night. Even one unaware of the spiritual significance of Vrindavan could feel a relief of mind in this simple countryside where people built fires from cow manure fuel and cooked their evening meals in the open. Their fires adding rich, natural smells to the indefinable mixture which was the odor of the earth. There were many gnarled old trees and colorful stretches of flowers, bushes of bright violet camellia, trees abloom with delicate white parijat blossoms, and big yellow kadamba flowers rarely seen outside Vrindavan. On the road, there was a lively horse-drawn tanga traffic. The month of Kartik, October-November, was one of the several times of the year that drew many pilgrims to Vrindavan. The one-horse tangas carried large families, some coming from hundreds of miles away. Larger bands of pilgrims, grouped by village, walked together. The women dressed in bright colored saris, brown skinned men and women sometimes singing bhajans, carrying but a few simple positions as they headed for the town of thousands of temples, Vrindavan. And there were businessmen like Abhay, dressed more formally, coming from a city, maybe to spend the weekend. Most of them had, had at least some resemblance of a religious motive to see Krishna in the temple, to bathe in the holy Yamuna river, to visit the sites when Lord Krishna had performed his pastimes, such as lifting of Govardhan hill, the killing of Keshi demon, or dancing in the evening with the gopis. Abhay was sensitive to the atmosphere of Vrindavan and he noted the activity along the road. But more than that, he cherished with anticipation the fulfillment of his journey, his meeting again after long separation, the saintly person he had always thought of within himself, Śrīla Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, who had spoken to him in Calcutta and had convinced him of Lord Chaitanya's mission to preach Krishna consciousness. Abhay would soon see him again, and this purpose filled his mind. Upon reaching the lantern-illuminated camp of the Gaudiya Math, inquiring at the registration post, he was allowed to join the Parikrama village. He was assigned to a tent of Grihastha men and was offered prasadam. The people were friendly and in good spirits, and Abhay talked of his activities with the Matha members in Calcutta and Allahabad. Then there was a gathering. A sannyasi was making an announcement. This evening, he said, there would be a scheduled visit to a nearby temple to see the deity of Sheshashai Vishnu. Some of the pilgrims cheered, Hari Bol, Hare Krishna. The sannyasi also announced that His Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur would speak that evening for the last time and would be leaving the parikrama party the next day. So there was choice of going on the parikrama or staying for the lecture. So Srila Prabhupada. So I met them in Kosi. And Keshav Maharaj was informing that Srila Bhakti Siddhanta is going to Mathura tomorrow morning and he will speak Harikatha this evening. Anyone who wants to may remain. Or otherwise they may go to see Sheshashai Vishnu. So at that time, I think only 10 or 12 men remained. Sridhar Maharaj was one of them. And I thought it wise. What can I see at this Sheshashai? Let me hear what Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati will speak. Let me hear. When Abhay arrived, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta was already speaking. He sat with his back erect, a shawl around his shoulders, not speaking like a professional lecturer giving a scheduled performance, but addressing a small gathering in his room. At last, Abhay was in his presence again. Abhay marveled to see and hear him, this unique soul possessed of Krishna Katha, speaking uninterruptedly about Krishna in his deep, low voice, in ecstasy and deep knowledge. Abhay sat and heard with rapt attention. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati had been speaking regularly about Sambandha, Adideya, and Prayojan. Sambandha is a stage of devotional service in which awareness of God is awakened. Abhideya is rendering loving service to the Lord, and Prayojan is the ultimate goal, pure love of God. He stressed that his explanations were an exact recapitulation of what had originally been spoken by Krishna and passed down through disciplic succession. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati's particular utterance, mostly Bengali, but sometimes English, with frequent quoting of Sanskrit from the Shastras, was deep with erudition. It is Krishna, said Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, who is the only super lord over the entire universe and beyond it, of Vaikuntha, the transcendental region. As such, no one can raise any obstacle against his enjoyment. An hour went by, 2 hours. The already small gathering in Srila Bhakti Siddhanta's room gradually thinned. A few sannyasis left, excusing themselves to tend to duties connected with the parikrama camp. Only a few intimate leaders remained. Abhay was the only outsider. Of course, he was a devotee, not an outsider, but in the sense that he was not a sannyasi, was not handling any duties, and was not even initiated, and was not traveling with the parikrama, but had joined only for a day. In that sense, he was an outsider. The philosophy Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati was speaking, however, was democratically open to whoever would give an ardent hearing, and that Abhay was doing. He was listening with wonder. Sometimes he would not even understand something, but he would go on to listening intently, submissively, his intelligence drinking in the words. He felt Srila Bhakti Siddhanta revealing to him the direct vision of spiritual world, just as a person reveals something by opening a door or pushing aside a curtain. He was revealing the reality. And this reality was loving service to the lotus feet of Radha Krishna, the supreme worshipable personality of Godhead. How masterfully he spoke, and with conviction and boldness. Hare Krishna.